attempts of the Bolsheviks trying to invade Mongolia. This 2021 year marks the 100th anniversary of the Mongolian Revolution of 1921. The Government of Mongolia has made a decision to officially celebrate the anniversary date in this year by paying it special attention. What events was in Mongolia 1921? Why we are celebrating these days still today? Based on archival documents, try to give answer to key questions. In analyzing this question, we hope to find and get closer to the truth of relevant historical events. In the 1920s, the Mongolian People's Revolutionary Party was a party founded by the Oriental section of the Siberian Bureau of the Central Committee of Communist Party of Russia to spread communist ideology in Mongolia. Especially, their task was to bring communists into Mongolia. The domestic ministry of Bogd Khan's government stated that in response to the declaration from the temporary administration of the Mongolian people's government to all the Mongolian people and many monks and nobles, that Bogd Khaan notified and took power legally and formed his government in Niislel Khuree, and the letter was sent to the governors of the following 4 counties of Tushet-Khan province. These 4 counties were closer to Russian border because the 4 counties were considered as the places where Red Russian influence could be first introduced. The letter said, if various groups and parties will be founded and the notice without the permission of the Bogd Khaan is issued, it is harmful to the great case of uniting the people to build our Mongolia. So, if anything, it should be executed immediately. The reply to it was given as clear denial. Any announcement made by the People's Party to Mongolia is something meaningless and harmful issued by the instruction of the Red Party, trying to deceive Mongolia just as they deceived Russia. In the letter, they described the nature of the Red Party clearly as follows, so that everyone could understand. The Bogd Khan's government was well aware of the purpose of the Soviet Red Party. In the letter it said, the Red Party deceived the masses in order to take power, making people believe that they will bring happiness to them. But after reaching the goal, they plundered the property of peasants and merchants and destroyed places of worship such as temples and killed many people. Also, they plundered everything that the king and other officials had built, who are getting rich with their labor and forcing them to starve the deeds. In addition, they said, the world cannot exist without a god, also as family cannot exist without an owner. So the people cannot live without kings. And we don't know what happened to the Chinese and the Russians after they have pulled down their kings. By this statement, they tried to make people understand how dangerous communism is by stating the ideology of abolition. The definition is the Redis propaganda, who was enemy of all countries in the world. And then they forced everyone who took part in making the notice, including Duke Batsaikhan, Sukhbatar, Count Sumya, to immediately come to Niislel Khuree and listen to the Bogd Khaan. That is leaflet issued by the domestic ministry of Bogd Khan's government to the people who made the notice from the People's Party and to the counties of the Dushet-Khan provinces, which were the strong points for them. Early on April 11, 1921, there was warning letter from the comrades in Urga city to the representatives of the Mongolian People's Party established in Khakhta, in which it stated, when we look at the activity carried out by you all, our comrades in arms, you have had completely different goal from the original goal for us and the Bogd Khaan and the Mongolians. So you all deserved to come back. In other words, it first our goal was different. As comrades in arms, we had warned that you must come back because you had been misled by others. According to Maisky, 1918, the Mongol X Company bought 50,000 big cattle and about 60,000 sheep from Mongolia and delivered them to Red Army to the Trans-Baikal front. The Maisky Central Soyuz and association that came to Mongolia through the Consumers Association had 333 full-time staff members who organized livestock procurement and its workers in Mongolia for rounding up cattle. In total, there were almost 1,850 employees, including current agents and herd drivers. The association took an active part in promoting the ideology of the Soviet government and of the Bolsheviks in Mongolia. In March 1920s, the Supreme Council of the People's Economy, the Soviet Union, supplied the Central Union with 3.5 million rubles, 80 pounds of silver, tea and clothes for purchase of livestock from the Mongols. In July 1918, due to this tense situation on the Mongolian border, the Bogd Khan's government established 4 new checkpoints on the Mongolian-Russian border to prevent Bolsheviks from coming into Mongolia. Also, the Bogd Khan's government stated that they considered the former Russian consuls to be official and would support them with arms so that the Bolsheviks could not run their activity. However, by August 1918, Niislel Khuree had become a secret place for many Soviet statesmen and the Bolsheviks, including Johnson, Mulder, Volka, Rogozin, Igunin, and Melnikov, and all members of Central Siberian Bureau. In fact, by the end of 1918 and the beginning of the 1919, secret group to implement their activity and ideology was established in Niislel Khuree, directly organized by the Bolsheviks, who secretly stayed in Mongolia. Little bit about the process of establishing Mongolian People's Revolutionary Party. At that time in Khuree, where they were open and hidden conflicts and struggle between group of Russian settlers called the White and Bolsheviks refugees, who secretly fled their homeland and their way from Soviet Russia to China. On March 11, 1920, Sorokoviku met with 5 members of Mongolian secret group at the home Kuchinenko, Russian and Mongolian print room worker in Niislel Khuree. They discussed ways to contact Soviet Russia and the Comintern. In April 1920, Otto Ivanovich Makstenik was appointed plenipotentiary representative of the Soviet People's Commissariat for Foreign Affairs in Mongolia, but he was afraid of the whites in Mongolia, so he stayed in Troitsk until August 1921, where he was in charge of making contracting with the Mongols. If Makstenik was able to stay in Niislel Khuree, he would have intended to arrange the meeting on March 1st, 1921, for establishing the Mongolian People's Party in Khuree. At that time, this division did not allow a representative, the People's Commissariat of Foreign Affairs of Soviet Union, to enter Mongolia or Urga city. So in Yakhta, beyond the Mongolian border, he was responsible for the preparation for the revolution. It was clear that Sorokovikov secretly visited Mongolia several times in spring 1920. Particularly, he came to Mongolia in June 1920 and met with members of the secret group. That is why Malakshanov called him mediator of friendship. At that time, in May 1920, Borisov, head of Mongolo-Tibetan department, Ishtorch, translator Rinchino, secretly arrived in Mongolia. In July 1920, Mesnikov, trainer for the Irkutsk Oblast Union Committee, visited Khuree and brought with him the action plan of the Russian Communist Party in Mongolia and appeal from the Soviet government to the Mongolians. In August 1920, at the request of the Mongolian side, the Orientis section of the Siberian Bureau of the Central Committee, Russian Communist Party, established a Mongolian Tibetan department in Irkutsk after the Mongolian People's Party delegation arrived there. The department was first established under the Orientis Club, and in mid-January 1921 it was working under the control of Comintern's Far Eastern Secretariat until its dissolution. The reason why the organization belonged to the Russian Communist Party was transported to the Comintern was that the Comintern was granted in August 1920 the authorization to act on behalf of international among the Oriente. Its purpose was to select and unite all the staff working among the Oriente, especially officials, to be sent through the People's Commissariat of Foreign Affairs and the Comintern, using Orientis section of the Siberian Bureau. In August 7, 1920, later by Goncharov, secretary of the Siberian Bureau of the Russian Communist Party from Omsk, to Zinoviev, head of the Comintern, he stated, Russian staff of the Orientis section of the Siberian Bureau will begin work to establish Communist Party in China, Korea and Mongolia. And as we prepare the party apparatus here, he will send comrades to the relevant countries for carrying out extensive work, such as establishment of the independent party in the region. In other words, it intended to use Siberian Bureau of the Russian Communist Bolsheviks Party, located in Omsk, to spread communism in the Orient. The Orientis clubs, which were responsible for establishing communist parties, were to be centralized in Irkutsk. Starting from the August 1920, they were more organized and established the Mongolian Tibetan department in Irkutsk. Borisov worked as head of the Mongolian Tibetan department in 1920-1921. He arrived in Mongolia in July 1920 with Kachitsky Sitinish and arranged for Mongolian People's Party representatives to take to Soviet Russia. After Borisov, Burtman was the head of the Mongolian Tibetan department. In early 1921, Burtman and Sorokovikov also came to Mongolia and carried out secret activity. So these people and Boris Shumatsky, who was in charge of the main work of Irkutsk, were the main leaders of the Mongolian People's Revolution. The aim of the Mongolian Tibetan department was to revolutionize the Mongolians and Tibetans, to spread Soviet Russian ideology, and to involve them in the struggle against the imperialism coming to Asia. The principles of activities of the Mongolian Tibetan department of the Oriental section, established in August 1920 in Irkutsk, were determined. In the document determining principles of activity of the Mongolian Tibetan Division is mentioned: People's Revolutionary Party, newly born in Mongolia, support to the Mongolian People's Revolutionary Party, addressing the Mongolian People's Revolutionary Party. Educated. In this document, the name Mongolian People's Revolutionary Party has been mentioned several times, indicating that the party with such name had been formed or already arranged to be established even before March 1921. Thereby, I mean that the so-called Mongolian People's Party or Mongolian People's Revolutionary Party was not a party founded on the initiative of Mongolians. In addition, it stated, agents and the staff of the department must attend the conference of the People's Revolutionary Party in person, indicating that Mongolian People's Party's meeting on March 1st, 1921 in Khakhta was organized by the Mongolian Tibetan Division. At the meeting, it was said that the party programs must be developed under their direct control, and the government body of the party to be elected by the conference must follow to some extent the ideology of the division. This clearly indicates where and by whom the party document was prepared, approved at the Mongolian People's Party meeting on March 4, 1921. We need to investigate how many of the 17 or 26 people who conveyed Mongolian People's Party were from the Mongolian Tibetan Division. In August 1920, secret instructions were given to the border posts on the procedure for Mongolian Party representatives entering into Soviet Union. In the instruction letter, all representatives of the Mongolian Party must cross the border at a checkpoint. If delegation is detained, he or she must immediately demand to visit the commandant in order to request that immediately transferred to the nearest Soviet plenipotentiary mission in Russia, as indicated by the Mongolian Bureau. And all delegates should try to wear Russian clothes when visiting Russia, and delegates must not hand over his belongings or documents to anyone. In Mongolia and Russia, none of the members of the Mongolian Party should meet with others without consent of Soviet Russia. All delegates must have stamped ID card with passport given by the Mongolian Bureau. In addition, there is no mention made at all in any historical documents about the authoritative organization Mongolian Bureau mentioned in these instructions. It was the only organization in charge of Mongolian affairs within Mongolian Tibetan Division. Thus, on March 4, 1921, a meeting to establish Mongolian People's Revolutionary Party was organized jointly by the Mongolian Tibetan Division of the Oriental section of Siberian Bureau of Communist Central Committee of the Russian Communist Party and the Mongolian Bureau. It had been recorded in archival sources that in the fall of 1920 they discussed preparations to establish the party at the meeting of the Oriental section of the Siberian Bureau of the Central Committee of the Russian Communist Party. The Russian Communist Party secretly sent communists to Niislel Khuree to make Mongolia become their other home. But in the meantime, the Bogd Khaan government was reestablished with the help of the Baron Unger's troops, and his decision was made to ban the communists from entering Mongolia. At the joint emergency meeting of the leaders of the Oriental section of the Siberian Bureau Communist Party of Russia and the Mongolian Tibetan Division on October 29, 1920, they decided to immediately insert Soviet troops into Mongolia. At the meeting, the Shipilov said, we want to Soviet troops to enter Mongolia, but I proposed to do it in the sense of the independent autonomous Mongolian soldiers, and supporting him, Naum Burtmung, head of the Mongolian Tibetan division, said, the Mongolian government needs to be formed for us, and we need to escape Comrade Dashipilov's proposal, insisted that Soviet Russia was going to send its troops into Mongolia at the request of the government. In other words, we can understand that Soviet Russia used the tactic of sending its troops to Mongolia, in which they will first form Mongolian government. Then a request will be made for the entry of Russian troops on its behalf. They determined the goal of sending troops to Mongolia in order to defeat Ungar's troops, but also added the words to stop Japanese influence. On June 16, 1921, when the decision to send Soviet troops to Mongolia was made, the Prime Minister of the Far Eastern Republic, Krasnochekov, proposed measures to strengthen the position of Soviet Russia in Mongolia to the Council of People's Commissariat of the USSR and the People's Commissariat of Foreign Affairs. The proposal states it was needed to establish national autonomous government in Mongolia, not the independent Mongolian government. And as soon as we occupy Niislel Khuree, the government must establish relations with China and escape its sovereignty. This means that Checherin's proposal and Krasnochekov's proposal did not reflect Mongolia's interest at all. From this we can see the words Chinese interest and escaped Chinese sovereignty. So it is still double fooled that Danzang, Bodo and other comrades of the Mongolian People's Party knew that when the communists were trying to send Russian troops to Mongolia and realized the policy of red communism in Mongolia, that they supported China at the same time. At the meeting of the Political Bureau of Central Committee of the Russian Communist Party on June 16, 1921, Checherin's proposal to send Soviet troops to Mongolia to fight Unger was approved. In Checherin's suggestion to grab chance of the favorable current conditions to strike at Unger's army and to abide by the principle of Chinese sovereignty over this territory after invading Mongolia, besides it to pursue the program for Mongolian self-government and national liberation. Favorable current situation in Checherin's proposal means the time when Ungar's troops invaded the territory of the Far Eastern Republic and were repulsed by the troops of Soviet Russia. In addition, in the letter by Checherin, the entry of Soviet troops into Mongolia is intended to protect Chinese interests, so we have no intention of violating those interests. In order to let the government of China know this, we should establish diplomatic relations with the government of China immediately. It means that the Soviet side had a hidden goal of negotiation with Chinese government, using Mongolia as playing cards. In taking closer look at ideas and goals written by Checherin on the letter, it is clear that the point of the People's Revolution is completely different from the preceding, as that the Mongolian People's Party expelled Chinese invaders from Mongolian territory and granted freedom to Mongolians. That's why it's really obvious to us that at that time Soviet troops came to Mongolia to protect Chinese interests, not to expel the Chinese from Mongolia. Conclusion: how can we interpret this history of Mongolia? I think that above factors have given you clear understanding about the process of establishing of the Mongolian People's Revolutionary Party and preconditions of the People's Revolution of 1921. Latimore noted that People's Republic of Mongolia is satellite country of the Soviet Russia, and well-known Rupin wrote on his book Mongols of the 20th Century that no revolution in Mongolia took place in 1921. Only some Khalkhas, Buryats and Russians seized power. It means that the revolution was exported. This conclusion is also mentioned in a reference book on the situation in Mongolia, Batsaikhan, published in Japan in the 1938. The People's Revolution of Mongolia 1921 was the export of the Russian October Revolution by the invasion of Soviet troops into Mongolia. Thank you for your attention.